Good evening and welcome to the June 23rd Common Council meeting. Would you please call the roll?
Allison Osby.
Here.
Krause.
Here.
Mugrower.
Here.
Erickson.
Here.
Heschel. Ford.
Here.
Palmieri.
Here.
Present 6.
And Councilmember Allison Osby will lead us in the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
We ask for guidance tonight as we begin this meeting. May all those who participate in our discussions and our decisions reflect the values that we cherish in this great city. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first up, we have a presentation to council regarding the West 9th Avenue reconstruction options. And I believe Mr. Rabi is going to kick that off.
Actually, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gierach to lead the presentation. I'm just here to help answer questions as we go through.
All right.
All right.
Justin.
Good evening. Thank you. Here tonight, as you indicated, to talk to about the West 9th Avenue, different layouts and different options for the reconstruction. Currently, 2021, we have scheduled in the CIP for a full reconstruct from South Oakwood Road to Linden Oaks. The current cross section is a 20-foot asphalt pavement section with approximately 2-foot gravel shoulders and ditches, all situated within a right-of-way currently from anywhere from 66 feet to 80 feet of right-of-way. Varies depending on where you're at and different developments as they've progressed over the years. West 9th Avenue currently is classified as a collector. At some point in the future, maybe 20 or so years, depending on how things develop, it will become an arterial street. With that, recommendation would be a 48 feet face-to-face concrete street. Projected life would be 50 to 70 years, depending on ultimate use. So want to make sure we build this to the right width now, so we don't have to worry about prematurely reconstructing in the future. The bicycle and pedestrian master plan was updated in 2019, approved by council at the November 12th meeting last year. Recommends bike lanes. Bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee discussed at their April meeting and also recommended the bike lanes to go along with the capital improvement project. This 9th Avenue bike lanes would connect with the Oakwood bike lanes that were installed not too long ago. The Traffic and Parking Advisory Board discussed at the June meeting and voted to make no recommendation and refer the options to council for direction. Option 1 is a 2 bike lanes, a 2-way left turn lane or twiddle, and 12-foot travel lanes. Typically, we'll see road diets set up in some fashion of this, and the road diets are designed to slow traffic, make it safer for pedestrians. We've done that here recently on Murdoch and 9th Avenue to kind of assist that. The twiddle, as I indicated, slows traffic, allows for safer left turn lanes. And another one of the pros for this is, in the future, we will not need to remove parking lanes if they are put in now, and it applies or complies with the council-approved bike and ped plan from 2019. One of the cons for this is there's no on-street parking for these residents, and ultimately the traffic counts, as I missed earlier, but averaging about 2,800 vehicles per day on this stretch, it doesn't really necessitate the use of a twiddle. Just trying to use up the space of the 48-foot street. Option 2 is 2 bike lanes, 12-foot travel lanes, and parking on one side of the street. As you see on this cross section, there is a 1.5-foot paved shoulder on both sides, increased bike lanes to 6 feet, and a widened park lane to 9 feet. One of the pros to this layout here would be getting some parking on the street. We would could go either way, but recommend would be the parking on the north side, because it would provide actually more spaces. The north side has 4 residential driveways, one church with two different driveways and 3 intersections, whereas the south side has 20 residential driveways and 2 intersections. So your amount of parking would be increased on the north side, but could go either way. The plan, or this layout would also comply with the approved bike and ped plan. One of the cons for this option is at some point in the future, parking will need to get removed. Once it becomes an arterial, it needs to get to its full build out. The increased parking and bike lane widths may result in traffic speeds as the drivers may feel more comfortable and free to increase their speeds. And ultimately, traffic may attempt to pass on the right, if you will, in that parking and biking lane if there's no one in it. Option 3 is 2 bike lanes, 11-foot travel lanes, and parking on both sides. This option brings the travel lane back down to 11 feet and gives you a more typical 5-foot bike lane and 8-foot parking lane. One of the obviously pros for the residents on this would be parking on both sides of the street. This would also result in most likely the slowest vehicular speeds, as it feels more visually congested to the drivers. And also with options 1, 2, and 3, or 1 and 2, it complies with the approved bike and ped plan. One of the cons, as with layout 2, is parking will need to get removed in the future. Again, the administration in the future, once it becomes an arterial, will need to make that tough decision to remove the parking to go to the four travel lanes. And again, traffic may attempt to pass on the right in the parking and bike lane. Option 4 is ultimately the full build out at 4 12-foot travel lanes. One of the pros for this is ultimately it is set up for future growth, and this is the planned configuration as it sits for the ultimate future. Cons, we're not going to have parking, no bike lanes, could result in the highest vehicular speeds as it feels more open to the drivers, and it ultimately does not comply with the council approved bike and ped plan. With that, do you have any questions? And I do have kind of the 4 layouts on top of each other to kind of see it one by one.
Councilmember Ford?
Yeah, the first option where you mentioned the traffic counts as they stand right now don't require the use of a twiddle. Do you anticipate that to be changing at some point over the next 10, 20 years?
Very well, it very could. I mean, once the development grows west,
Yeah.
vehicles would increase in the area. A twiddle could be used in the future.
Okay.
And certainly if the west side arterial that has been, kind of in the conceptual plan for a number of years, if that were ever to materialize, we would expect to see a significant increase in traffic through this stretch of 9th Avenue.
Awesome. Thank you.
Other council members, questions? Thank you. I guess the only question would be, would we expect to see this on the next agenda for consideration?
Yes, our intention would be that we would be looking for direction from the council at the July 14th meeting. The letter that all the residents received did indicate that that was our plan. They did also receive all the options that we presented to you tonight. They've been instructed to either contact you directly or to submit comments via the city manager email address. I believe, Pam, there have been a number of them received that you all received copies of in your packets tonight and will be attached to the record of this meeting.
All right, thank you.
All right?
Good.
Thank you.
Next, we have consent agenda. Do we have any comments registered for consent, Pam?
No, we do not.
All right, back to council for motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Councilmember Ford?
Yeah, just real quick, I wanted to commend staff for items 5, 6, and 7, where we're awarding bids. I know I'd asked about it earlier. I'm not sure if that's why you did it or not. Maybe it's just par for the course, but you reported the number of bids we had received on each of those items. I think that's good to know anytime we put something out to bid, so thank you.
Any other items?
Yep.
Councilmember Mugrauer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know we've got our representative from, I think, Ellers back there. If you wanted to come up and speak to the bids for items 3 and 4 tonight, that's the bonds that we are hopefully going to approve here.
another set of favorable rates, just like 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
So looks like some very competitive bids, multiple bids, and we're saving some money on our refinancing big time, so.
Right, 1.93 and 1.88, 4 bids and 3 bids respectively, so all good news.
No, I'm excited that we get to save that much money over the life of these notes and bonds. That's good for us and good for the taxpayer, so.
Absolutely.
Appreciate the hard work on getting those put out and bringing them back to us.
Our pleasure.
If there is no other discussion on consent, will please take the roll.
Allison Osby,
Aye.
Crozy,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 6.
All right, moving on to.
Just a moment. Mr. Peschel
Oh,
is
he
here.
did
He
arrive.
did sign in.
Oh.
He did acknowledge, but we're checking to see if the sound works for him. Bob, can you hear us? We can't hear Bob.
Oh, you're muted, so we need to unmute. One moment, one moment.
I can, what? He said he's not muted.
If you go
Yeah,
down,
I
there's
saw
a mute.
him chime in.
The
When you
microphone
didn't
is
use his
muted.
name, I knew there was something wrong.
Down at the bottom, on the left.
I think it turned red when
But Bob, you can hear us, correct? Thumbs up if you can hear us. All right, see, Bob can hear us.
Can he vote a thumbs up for you for this one?
The next ones are going to go real fast, though.
And then, Mr. Van Gompel, I see you're also with us remotely. Are you able to hear us okay?
Good question.
Yeah, we're just not getting audio on either of them.
You can hear us, but we can't hear you, Russ. Yeah.
We're just going to have a momentary recess while we get our technical difficulties worked out here.
I hate COVID. I hate COVID. Makes everything work out.
Bob, if you could try to speak right now.
Do our remote participants have the option of calling in to a different phone line?
I think I can get Mr. Peschel if I call him. I will try that. That's a good idea. Yes.
So Bob, if you can hear us, city manager is going to attempt to call you via telephone. Can you give me a thumbs up?
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read our new ordinances, and then perhaps we'll be able to have our remote folks join us. I believe you can hear us, right? Thumbs up? Okay,
What I'm gonna
Madam
do.
Mayor,
yes.
Can we get a confirmation of how he's voting on the consent? And if he had
Oh,
any
I'm sorry.
questions?
So, Bob, were you yay or nay on consent? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Thumbs up is yes? All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
I have
so,
Mr. Peschel on the phone.
okay.
So Bob, I'm just gonna leave you open to talk when you need to.
You could stay on video if you want. We just have you on audio. I don't know
Yeah.
what we're going to do with Mr. Van Gompel, but hopefully we'll get it resolved by then. All right, very good. Moving on to new ordinances, there will be no action, formal action taken this evening. Ordinance 20-285, amend room tax and short-term rental ordinances. I did have a question, a message that came in regarding,
Hold on, can we ask if Bob can mute on his end until it's his turn to speak, please? Otherwise, there's gonna be a whole
Bob,
lot.
if you can mute on your end until until we need you. There's some background noise. Okay.
a question for City Attorney Lawrenson
Yes.
on this. There was a message that I received that VRBO is automatically taking out the taxes for the short-term rentals now.
correct.
And-
That was a change in state law, and that's essentially why we're updating our ordinances. We're bringing our ordinances up to speed with the new state law changes, which affect VBRO, the Airbnb, HomeAway, those types of online platforms. They now have to take those taxes out and report them to the municipalities. And then there's just a minor, we had a reference to a manager's licensing that we had pulled out of the ordinance, but it got missed in one spot. And there was a change on the seller's permits as well. We required them for everything because at the time we passed our ordinance, that was how the state statute read. That's been modified slightly as well. So those are the changes.
All right, thank you. Bob, did you have any question on that one? You can, no? Okay. Moving on, ordinance 20-286, amend city public records ordinance. Again, no action on this, but perhaps the
Kind of the same thing, we're just updating language, we're formally adopting the state statutes, and then the Wisconsin Public Records and Forms Board has come up with certain standard schedules for records. We would be proposing to adopt those and move a fee provision from the ordinance into resolutions to match our practice with other codes and ordinances.
Did you say remove our fee?
Remove it from the ordinance and do it by resolution as
Okay.
we do with other fees and
Okay.
permits and such.
Councilmember Peschel, did you have anything on this one?
I did not.
Okay, thank you. Next, 20-287, amend parking ordinance for P2 Convention Center North Parking Lot and P9 Otter Lot. Is there a significant change to this?
They were
item?
just, those two lots were reconstructed and they have leased stalls in them, so we're just bringing the maps up to date to match the currently existing lots.
All right, 20-288, there were various sections, amend various sections of Chapter 11 Electrical Code. And 20-289, amend bicycle registration ordinances. If we could just share what the changes are to the bicycle registration.
Electrical code I can do really quick. too.
Okay.
That one is just bringing us up into conformity with state statutes. Same thing, the statutes were updated and we needed to get back up to the current codes. Bicycle registration is proposing to eliminate the bicycle registration fee and the physical bicycle licenses and move bicycle registration online through a city website with just the serial number for identification.
And that's if they're recovered, they're stolen,
Right.
lost, that kind of thing.
The police would look at the serial number. So the physical licenses, people just haven't actually been doing them.
That's what I understood.
So,
Just haven't had a large number of people actually doing the registration.
yep.
Bob, any questions or comments on that? Oh,
I'm trying to get fancy, I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, while we are waiting, you do have a communication in your folder regarding this ordinance.
so we did have some comments registered, and that is, oh, on the bicycle one, okay, right? Yeah. So, that's been registered for the record, that email?
Yes.
Okay. 20-290, amend various sections of Chapter 2, Chapter 6, Chapter 7, Chapter 8, Chapter 16, 17, 19, 20, and 27A. Are
This-
these,
This is our big cleanup one. It's removing outdated references to departments and divisions. We're removing and amending some outdated code references that need to go to the right code sections. There were some park facilities that were renamed. We're updating and clarifying processes for voting present at council meetings and board and commission meetings to match our practices.
and on that one, City Attorney,
Yeah.
would that go out in the form of a memo to update all of our boards and commissions so they're aware of
Yes.
that? Okay.
Yep. And there's a provision to clarify, basically, my authority is to sign settlement agreements with insurance coverage. Occasionally, they come back and question whether I have authority, the other attorneys, if I have authority to sign. So it's just clarifying that, yes, I do have that authority to sign on behalf of the city. And the last thing is just a few minor revisions to bicycle and parking regulations to match some recent construction.
Okay, Bob, any comments on either of those items?
None.
Okay. Any other council members? Okay. Next is 20-291, zone change from institutional district to institutional district with a plan development overlay at 221 North Sawyer Street. And Plan Commission recommends approval of that zone change. I believe we also received some comments that were registered related to this item.
Correct. And then we do have an individual that would like to speak.
All right.
Okay. David Zerby.
David Zerby, come on up over here to the your left. Welcome.
Thank you. David Zerby, 1217 National, pertaining to the zone change at 221 North Sawyer, which is for the fire department training tower. I know we did send email out. I think you all received that. First, thank you very much for letting me speak here. And I guess I would like to know how many of you actually went to this location on 12 to look at this site in front of our houses and how close it's actually going to be with this tower and the size of it. I thank you for those who did. Put yourself in my shoes with something like this in my front yard, basically. Anyway, my questions a lot were on the location of the tower, which I know they stated the south side would be a better location. I asked on the last meeting of the Planning Commission meeting, and about the north side of the building, and why it couldn't have been located on that side, since there are no private residences on that side, on the north side. There's apartments to the west, which are partially hidden with 15 to 20-foot arborvitae trees. So that was my main question, why it could not be placed there, which would alleviate the congestion with the fire trucks, ambulances, training vehicles on National Ave in that parking lot, and the noise that it's going to create every time they train. So I guess those are my main concerns with that. My concern is not with the training center itself, it's the position of the tower right in front on the south side. I think that on the north side, there's nothing that couldn't be done there. The items that are in the lot could be moved easily enough, and they have ample room on that side of the building. So those were my concerns and my questions, and I guess I was kind of upset that we were notified only 12 days before the planning commission meeting. We had 12 days, that was it. Obviously, the city, the fire department has had 8 months to investigate this, and I'd like to know, I guess, why we weren't notified well before this. This is something new for me. I don't do this, and for us to try to get information and go through everything is impossible. That they've had ample time to go through everything. So please take that into consideration, that this has kind of been thrown on our laps here on National Ave, and would like maybe be looked into a little bit before you rezone this, because once you do that, then they're free. My understanding is to build a 40-foot tower in that parking lot. I guess with that being said, I know if this does go through, I just, like I said, ask you to put yourself in our shoes, who live there and have to look at this on a daily basis and listen to the noise that's going to generate from the training. And again, if it's a training center, that's fine, that's great. I wish they could have something, a nice facility. But if the tower could be at least reconsidered to be on the north side of the building. And then with so much uncertainty looming, we would like the Oshkosh, the fire department, who is going to be taking this over, to work with the neighbors to develop some kind of a plan before development actually starts, which I was told was middle of July, to what was said at the last meeting. So with that, I guess that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
And just as a reminder too, this is the first reading, so this will come back in 2 weeks.
Correct.
And before a vote. So I believe that would be July 14th?
14th.
Yeah. So I would be surprised if it started that soon.
Well, that's what I said too, but obviously some people think that this is kind of a said and done deal already.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Do we have anyone else registered to speak on this item?
No, we do not.
Okay. Councilmember Mugrower.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's important, I know that him and his wife had reached out, as well as several other residents had reached out. I listened in on the Planning Commission meeting as well. I know Mr. Ford was there. But maybe, Mr. Roloff, would you mind, and I don't know if Chief Stanley is
I can't get him without cutting out Mr. Peschel, and
I had let him know I was going
Mr.
to possibly
Peschel
call on
did.
him this evening, so I'm going to put you
That's
on the
okay.
proverbial hot seat. If you could just explain a little bit. Obviously, we've known that the fire department was looking to add a training tower for a while. As the resident alluded to, we have known, it was part of our CIP for this year. So we had agreed already with budget dollars that we would support this expenditure. With your interactions with the facility study that was completed, obviously they looked at the building, potential layouts. Maybe you can give some additional information for not only them, but also people at home that are listening, why that particular spot on that lot is A, the ideal spot, or B, that we can't move it to the other area for other reasons. Maybe
Sure.
you could expand a little bit.
no, I think it's appropriate. The armory
is historically a training facility for the National Guard. So its ability to convert to a training facility for fire is very easy. It's a little aged, but the bones of the building are very good. Mr. Zerbe, I had the same question for Chief Stanley when I first toured the site and asked about the different locations for the tower. The north side of the building has where the vehicles come out. There'll be some vehicle storage there. It's very, very difficult for vehicles to negotiate when the tower is in that part of the facility because of garage space, that cars are coming out of the garage, as well as for training. The garage or the parking area on the south side of the building is much larger, and it allows vehicles to negotiate. There have been some concerns about parking on the street. This will enable less parking to be needed on the street because they'll be able to work in there. It's pretty much going to be a 9 to 5 type of operation. But obviously, the needs of the citizens do need to take place. And Chief Stanley has told me over and over, he's happy to work with the neighbors. Just a point of clarification, because of a comment Mr. Zerbe made, Mr. Zerbe is correct. It's going to be a little sooner. This is a prefab building, so later on in the agenda, we're asking for council to approve. The prefab building is essentially almost off the shelf. That sounds weird that a 4-story type of structure, but it's a prefab type of thing, and the police department has evaluated that. So it will be about the timing that Mr. Zerbe said. So I didn't want to put you on the spot, Madam Mayor, and I want Mr. Zerbe to know his statement was correct going out. This could be August, not July, but it could be as early as August that we get this facility delivered, depending on their availability after we go through the process to do the bidding or do the negotiations and bring it forth to council. Because they're pretty much they are an off-the-shelf type of product.
So are you by chance saying that this has already been ordered?
No, we cannot order it, but the committee has already evaluated it. You had asked about a committee. The committee's already been formed. The committee has made the recommendation. That's why they're ready to move on getting approval now, because they know the product that they've selected and are ready to proceed with that.
May I ask who's on the committee?
It's members of the fire department, the training staff, training chief, the training lieutenant, and other staff members.
So then when you mentioned that, Chief, I'm sorry,
That's good.
Councilmember Morar, when you mentioned that the Chief Stanley would be working with the neighbors, at what point would that?
Given the comments that have been made, I think it's appropriate that we work with them to make sure that we're going to be good neighbors to them. We're finally dusting off this facility and using it after several years of inactivity. Even before we took it over, there were a number of years, because the city attorney and I worked on getting it, its final disposition to us. And so it's been absent use at least as long as I've been here, which is 12 years. So it's been at least that long. So we need to be good neighbors. Chief Stanley has done some checking to find out about proper landscaping, and he's identified about $7,200 worth of landscaping we would need. That was going to happen with the training facility, but with the concerns over the training tower, it would be appropriate to get those, to make those purchases now, as well as the fencing for the slats in the fence or some type of product like that. That was brought up by the Plan Commission, I believe. And so Chief Stanley has looked into both fencing, slats, as well as landscaping, and he believes that can be done. It's a budget issue. It's certainly Chief Stanley is okay with that.
Councilmember Mugarauer had a follow-up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And actually, City Manager Rolfe kind of went down that path a bit. I know through my communications with Chief Stanley, as well as City Manager's office, one of my concerns was as best as possible working with the neighbors. It's not just the Zerbes, but also just all the neighbors, and trying to figure out a way to help, even if there's a 38-foot tower, there's no way we're going to obscure that, whether it's on the north side or the south side. I think we know that. But if there are things we can do at eye level to help improve the aesthetics, I think Chief Stanley has been more than willing to address those and to continue to do those. I know he even mentioned the instituting a new policy or policies to help the neighbors' concerns regarding like noise pollution. Basically, engines running late in the evening, parking concerns on a residential street. That they'll be instituting some policies and procedures to make sure that fire department staff is not doing those things, that those rigs aren't left on National Ave to block traffic, that the site itself can host those vehicles, that they should not need to be on the road, obstructing anything. So I just wanted to express that Chief Stanley has been more than willing to talk about improving that site as much as possible to make sure that as many of the concerns of the residents are heard and addressed as possible. So,
If I could, unless another council member has questions. Bob, did you have a question or a statement?
I did not have any questions.
Okay. Mr. Davis, could I just ask you, so when it's the city doing development on our own properties, does that go through the same site review process as privately owned?
When you're talking a project like this, absolutely. Central garage, any other public facilities, I think the shelter there at Mary Jewel Park went through the process as well. Just as for examples.
Okay, thank you. All right, and we didn't have anybody else registered to speak on this item, right?
No, we did not.
All right,
And
and this
I-
was the first reading, I'm sorry.
And I do have Chief Stanley on speaker if there are any questions you'd like to ask him. Hopefully I've done justice, but in case you have something, he's here.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Again, this is first reading. It will come back in 2 weeks. Our next new ordinance 20-292 approves zone change from central mixed-use district to central mixed-use district with a planned development overlay at 500 North Main Street. Plan Commission recommends approval, and staff recommends waiving the rules and adopting on first reading. Do we have anyone registered to speak on this item?
No, we do not.
Any written comments?
I have none.
Back to council for motion and a second.
So moved.
Second. Did I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, yes,
Wait.
okay.
to waive the
Just
rules and adopt
To
the first.
to waive the rules. Any discussion on waiving the rules? Please take the roll.
Allison Osby,
Aye.
Krause,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Peschel,
Present.
Ford,
Aye.
carried 6-1 present.
All right, and back to the zone change. Motion and a second for the actual zone change.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Councilmember Grauer.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, I just want to say thank you to the applicant, Mr. Larson, as well as the Boys and Girls Club, and your efforts to try to get this hung. This particular change centers around a piece of artwork that's going to hang on the side of what was the home of the Boys and Girls Club for a very long time in downtown Oshkosh on Main Street, but just through some technical issues, had to go this route. Very appreciative of you guys taking the time. I know it was cumbersome and it cost a few bucks. I thank a member of the community for stepping up and covering that, covering those costs. I know those dollars could have much better been used at the club than paying a fee to the city, but very appreciative of that person for doing so. But I'm thankful that we're able to get this up and get it up fast for you guys.
All right. Any further discussion? Please take the roll.
Allison Osby,
Aye.
Krause,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Homeri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, and just a little note here. Some of you may notice that I requested that ordinance 20-293 amendments be withdrawn. That is to allow the initial appointments that are expected later on this agenda to have more say in that, as well as it was brought to my attention after the agenda was published that there were some concerns about overrepresentation by non-residents. And so at this time, I'm withdrawing it, and that's just my report on that item. Next, we move on to pending ordinance 20-294, approve zone change from institutional with the university transition overlay to urban mixed use with a university transition overlay for a portion of property located at 471 High Avenue. Plan Commission recommends approval on this item. Do we have anyone registered to speak or comments registered?
No one is registered, and I have no comments.
All right, back to council for a motion and a second on 20-294.
So moved.
Second.
All right, discussion. Seeing none. Bob, did you have any on this item?
I did not.
All right, please take the roll.
Allison Osby,
Aye.
Krause,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, moving on to new resolutions. Resolution 20-295, approve appointments to Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Did we have any registered comments?
I do not have any.
Are there anyone registered? Is there anyone registered to speak?
No one is registered to speak.
Right, back to council for motion and a second on 20-295.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Councilmember Mugrower.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, first, as I've done before, I want to thank everybody who applied. It's important for citizens to be involved in their local government, and serving on boards and commissions is a fantastic way to get involved and be a part of the process and try to improve things. So thank you to the 8 we're approving tonight, as well as to all those that applied and maybe weren't approved or weren't selected at this time. My only comments regarding the group, the collective group, is just, you kind of alluded to it a little bit with the diversification of some of the members, and really it centers around not so much even backgrounds, but among the 8 we're approving tonight, 5 to 6 have basically a direct connection to Winnebago County government or the university. And while employment wasn't the driving factor in these individuals applying, I'm certain it's one part of the application that stood out for this collective group. I love the diversity regarding different backgrounds and different groups they're associated with and programs that they participated with. But that was one thing that stood out was that amount of people that have a direct connection to either county government or the local university. So it was kind of stark for me on that one.
Thank you for that input. Councilmember Allison Osby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I just wanted to bring up the discussion that we had this week, which is, it sounded like we had just an overwhelming response. So to Mr. Mugrower's point, that's amazing. And so I just wanted to put out there, although the event due to COVID-19 for Unity and Community was canceled, that perhaps if there are those that maybe there wasn't an opportunity at this time for this specific committee, that certainly feel free to reach out to myself or others, because perhaps, that might be a good opportunity, a good fit as well.
Yes, absolutely. And as well, I have mentioned to several of the applicants that even if they are not appointed to this committee, we have a number of newly open spots on others, transit, sustainability, traffic, some alternate positions with some other boards and commissions. So, there are other openings in other boards and commissions as well. And I too was very excited by the number of people that applied. And to address Councilmember Mugrower's concerns, I was very thorough in having interviews and discussions with the individuals about their personal experiences. And obviously, with some of our larger employers, and the university being one of those, I guess I'm not too surprised that we saw a significant number of applicants who happen to also work for the university. But keep in mind, this is 6 out of 9 plus the 2 alternates, so potentially 11 people. And certainly, sometimes people with lived experiences go on to do public service type careers. So I'm not overly concerned about, our applicants who happen to also work for the county. But certainly would like to have more input from that initial committee on filling those remaining spots. So are there other comments? Bob, did you have anything on this item? Councilmember Peschel?
I did not, sorry.
Oh, no worries. Councilmember Ford?
Yeah, to echo what everybody else said, I think it's important that the individuals who applied but weren't picked for this particular committee do reach out, or reach out to them, suggest some committee service for them. Because, I mean, it's great that we have a committee dedicated to diversity and equity. It's going to be even greater to have people that are dedicated to that concept serving on committees throughout our government. So I'm pleased to see so many people applied, and I hope we do reach out to them proactively.
Yes. All right. If there's no further discussion, please take the roll on 20-295.
Allison Osby,
Aye.
Krause,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
Next, we have 20-296, approve our annual licenses. Are there any registered comments or folks that would like to speak?
We do not have any.
Back to council for motion and a second on 20-296.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All right, please take the roll.
Allison Osby,
Aye.
Krause,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
And 20-297, approve annual licenses. This one is specific to the tavern named Screwballs. Any registered comments on this item
We do not have anybody registered.
or to speak? Okay.
No.
Back to council for motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
I have one comment. So
Yes.
I had this one placed on the agenda in this way so that I could vote present. One of my relatives is the proprietor of Screwballs.
Thank you. There's no further discussion. Please take the roll on 2297.
Allison Osby,
Aye.
Krause,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye. Present, sorry.
Ford,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 6, 1 present.
And 20-298, approve land exchange agreement with United Cooperative for Economic Development Administration, Southwest Industrial Park paving project. That's a lot of Ps. Any registered comments or folks that would like to speak on this item?
I do not have anything.
All right. Back to council for motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Councilmember Mugrower.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Davis was walking on up. We'll invite him to the podium. It sounds like, got a little bit of an update on this one, that this will help us advance the project out there, that we could get some additional approvals and potentially do some bidding later in the year possibly. This will help us out.
Yes, working with United Co-op to get this project done sooner rather than later.
Good.
Exactly.
Awesome. Good. Appreciate their cooperation on this,
Yeah.
on doing that, so.
All right, please take the roll.
Allison Osby,
Aye.
Krause,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, next is 20-299, approve general development plan, specific implementation plan for a wall sign at 500 North Main Street. Plan Commission recommends approval. Is there anyone registered to speak or comments registered?
I do not have anyone.
All right, I need a motion and a second, council.
So moved. Peschel.
Second.
Discussion. Councilmember Ford.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up that at Plan Commission, the applicant for this had mentioned that they had to pay to initiate this process, both for the zoning change and for the plan development. And they were concerned that they would have to initiate the process for removing this plan development once the Boys and Girls Club sign comes down. So it was certainly, everyone was made to understand that the goal is for the city to initiate the removal of the PD once the sign comes down in October, I believe, October 1st.
What is that amount?
$675.
Okay.
To get it and then to take it off, so.
Each
Correct.
way.
So-
Correct.
So 12.
The goal
13.
is to prevent
13.
further financial strain on these good folks.
All right, any further discussion? Please take the roll.
Ellison Osby,
Aye.
Carosi,
Aye.
Mugrover,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
O'Meary,
Aye.
carried 7.
And our last new resolution for the evening, 20-300, approve waiver of purchasing requirements for fire training drill tower. Are there any registered comments or people who wish to speak?
There are none.
Back to council for motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion on 2300.
Madam Mayor, just want to see, Chief Stanley, he may be possible speaking. Chief Stanley, are you there? I guess not, there was hope. I'll try to get him back on the phone. These are
Let's see
questions.
here. So is Mr. Van Gompel, oh, he's not dialed in either, is he?
No, but I can discuss any financial issues. This is really more of, it's a budgeted item, so.
Yeah, I'm on here too.
Okay,
And so, yeah, what's the main, I'm sorry, did we get a motion in a second on this one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
and we're in discussion, all right, good, we got it on the floor. What's the main reason for the waiver? Because it exceeds the 25,000?
well, it must be competitively bid unless some specific exemptions. And the committee, I think I'll let Chief Stanley, he is on the phone. So Chief, if you could explain your reasoning for having a selection and specification committee.
Yes, that as we've been evaluating this as a potential solution, that we looked for something that would be economically feasible for the city. You know, and this is a one-of-a-kind unit that nobody else in the country manufactures. That most of them are an enclosed building where burning could take place. You know, those, when we met with those vendors, that priced out somewhere between $670,000 to $1 million. You know, that's finding this more reasonable solution that meets the ISO requirements. It was what led us to make the request in the CIP. So sorry for the stunted talk, but you know, I'm getting feedback from both sides. So,
Well, we can hear you fine.
Yeah,
Can
that's
you
your
hear us
problem, Mike.
okay?
That's his problem.
right, but yeah, so that's how we came to that decision. You know, through our research of what meets the requirements, what meets our needs, and you know what is economically reasonable and feasible for the city.
So basically, the tower itself is a non-enclosed structure, so it was something they thought it was a specialized nature after they evaluated the different products that were out there, and that's why they're proposing to just be able to negotiate that price.
So I have a question about this. Is this in any way similar to the, like, fire tower at, like, some of the state parks? It's like an open, kind of multiple level stairwell, essentially? I'm just looking at the diagram on the screen here.
Yeah, conceptually, yes.
It's just the materials are metal as opposed to the wood ones that you see at the state
Sure,
structures.
sure.
But yeah, it's more than scaffolding. It's designed for this type of training purpose.
Any further discussion? Councilmember Ford?
Yeah, the bidding process is designed to save the city money. It sounds like this is so specific that the bidding process would in fact waste money because it would not be fruitful, and we know this is the only place we can get it. So this seems totally reasonable to me.
Okay, let's please take the roll.
Ellison Osby,
Aye.
Rousey,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right. Next, we have council discussion and direction to city manager, future agenda items. Are all of our council members available for July 8th for the council workshop, budget workshop number 1 from 5 to 8 p.m.? Everybody got that on their calendar?
Yeah, Diane, I think Diane checked with everybody and everybody seemed to be okay. The purpose of this,
Highlights, previews?
yeah, highlights, previews. You can't separate the capital improvement program from the debt. This is really going to be largely about debt management and how we're approaching that. It's not specifically to get into the weeds about all the specific projects and equipment, but that is all going to be there. You will have a complete CIP document like you've normally had. The document will look a little differently. Mr. Van Gompel has identified some software that's specifically designed for capital improvements. It analyzes it different ways, and so it meets city managers' needs, it meets council's needs, it meets engineers' needs, so there's a lot of value to it. So you'll see a different look to it, but each page is similar to what you've seen in the past. It'll have things, I know in the past, council really liked knowing the age of the infrastructure, for example, knowing that we're replacing sewers that were built in the 1880s, and sadly, we still are. But those are the types of things that you have that historical perspective, either a drawing or a map to identify a point of reference for it. But there's those products, that's available in this product. So you'll see that as well. The department heads will be there, but this is a 3-hour discussion that has normally been included during other departments' operating budgets, and you can still do that during their budget hearings later on, but this is more about I wouldn't say a 40,000-foot level, but maybe a 10,000-foot level, because you can't separate debt. And we're going to have a strong discussion about debt, which is normally what we do. We're moving the CIP workshop first because we want to get the planning document done. And then we'll finalize the fine details of the CIP after that. So that's kind of the preview. We are planning on a 3-hour, 5 to 8 p.m. If you could just plan accordingly. And our goal will be to get you through the whole CIP as a planning document for that night.
And I believe you have an item on the report from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities.
Would you mind if I ask just a
Councilmember
quick question on that one?
Yes.
Appreciate it, thank you. Obviously, that's the Wednesday after a holiday weekend. When can we expect to see whatever documents you're going to hand us? I'm just not interested in walking in that night and seeing it for the first time.
You don't want to look it over July 4th weekend, I take it?
Well, I would like to have it a few days, as much as possible, of course. So I'm just wondering what you're anticipating, when you're going to be able to deliver those documents to us for us to review and to ask questions and things like that, so it's not just new that evening.
I believe our goal is a week in advance.
Okay.
And Mr. Van Gompel gave me a draft copy this morning, so I'm putting some final touches on it. But so yeah, I think we can get it to you for a good 1-week review. Again, this will be the planning document, not the budgeting document.
But
You're going to still approve the capital improvement budget in November.
Appreciate it, thank you.
All right, moving on to the discussion of the report from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities on funding streets through transportation utility fees.
I believe we provided the council with a copy of that, and that came from the League of Municipalities. I know that City Attorney Lawrenson provided some input, at least from a review standpoint, what the league was doing with this. But the idea was to address the question of, do we have the legal authority to institute a transportation utility fee? And I think overwhelming the answer was yes, we have that authority. There's been questions, and it's like, if you want to look at a part of statute that doesn't say that it's allowed, well, you can find plenty of places where it says it's not allowed, but there's some general items, and city attorney has used this reference, the home rule reference, multiple times when she was explaining it. Lynn's footprint or thumbprints are on this because it confirms what Ms. Lawrenson has been saying for several years. So I think it helped to have a more distant, I can't say objective because I think the city attorney has been very objective about it. I know she appreciates that, even though I can't see her smile on her face. But the truth is that this confirms what the city attorney has said all along. And we had talked with the ad hoc committee on special assessments, and we assured them that we had the legal basis for it. They don't get into a ton of detail, digging deeper, but they do reference some of the things that have been reaffirmed in the past, that a fee based on traffic generation or something that you can objectively and methodically identify will be much more defensible, because you can still argue that a fee isn't fair even if it's legal. And so there's both those things. Again, I think Lynn also mentioned that. We have it out there. You received a copy of it. Happy to answer any questions. I think part of it was I purposely organized the chronology on the agenda so that we can segue whenever you want to, because we've got 2020 hearings on special assessments we got to do sometime. The city of Janesville, because of COVID, they didn't kick off that analysis that they were going to get done until last week. I don't know how much longer council wants to wait for Janesville. If the legal basis is pretty well established, do you want to go, do you want to wait for Janesville, or do you want to do something else?
So in other words, we could potentially put this on a future agenda item for bringing back that discussion.
Yeah, thank you. You summed it up.
Yeah, I think.
Does council have thoughts on bringing that back as either another workshop? We do have several new council members, but, or do we want to just put it straight on the agenda? Councilmember McGrawer?
Personally, I think putting it on the agenda, not necessarily that we're voting something up or down, but to give proper guidance, and we can actually do it tonight if we want to give any guidance to city staff to do anything, but I think that's the first step is, does council, A, want to take up this task, continue this task, not take it up because we were paused, we didn't stop it. Is council interested in continuing this task? I can tell you that there's members of the ad hoc committee who have communicated as of recent that they would be more than willing to unpause or start back up their service of the community to continue any discussions that we wanted them to have. But city manager is right. The league's opinion really is helpful because that it confirms our basis. It confirms what we knew, what city attorney had conveyed to council numerous times, as well as that committee. But the part two of what Janesville was going to be doing, they were going to confirm the legal side of it, but two was they were going most likely going to figure out the fee side, figure out how to implement something that's legally defensible yet equitable and explainable too. Do we want to wait for Janesville to do that, or do we want to give the city manager some direction on him trying to figure out a way to figure that part out for us so we can have that discussion going further too? Because we can, the big part is already chopped off, the legal part is already chopped off. Now it's what's the mechanism, what's the structure we use to determine what kind of fee and how it relates to usage.
Technical question for Ms. Lawrenson. Since this is technically a new council and that was an ad hoc that discontinued prior to this new council, are they still considered to be a
I'd
viable?
have to take a look. I can't recall how they adjourned, unless
I
you
believe that the
recall.
council's direction was to make
got
a
the-
recommendation.
We got the final recommendation, and they were done, I thought.
I think they were done. In my opinion, they were done. And so you could certainly reconvene them. It's an ad hoc committee.
Yeah.
That would, you could just put a resolution on the agenda and just, you know.
Renew it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the old resolution worked. It's just putting it back on, but,
I would agree.
yeah.
So in other words, so are we talking about bringing the actual proposal that was previously submitted to the council before that ad hoc, but changing to look at this trip generation? Or going through the whole process of reconvening ad hoc and delaying, or what is council's preference?
I think after, personally, and I know we've got two new council members, so I absolutely I want to hear what they have to say, so I don't want to hijack the discussion. But I think, oh, I lost my train of thought there. No, it's important for that, I think it's important for that group to try to help out if they, at all possible, but within some more narrow parameters. That one of the reasons that council decided not to move forward with the proposal that they gave us was it had some legal challenges. Of anything, it was the most legally, it wasn't defensible. It wasn't very strong. If council gave direction that says, we'd like you to work within these parameters to try to come up with something, I think that would be some good guidance to give to a group, that we'd like you to stay within these bounds and try to figure something out. Instead of, don't just reinvent the wheel, but here's some of the parameters that we'd like you to consider.
Councilmember Ford, did you have something? Or Councilmember
She was
Allison
up
Osby?
first, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
So that actually was my question. Is it, to start over from scratch, or is it to take, what kind of what was the result, and then narrow it down from there, or what's the intent? Again, I go back to that, whatever we decide to do, we need to be really crystal clear at where we are in the process so that it doesn't confuse the citizen or the taxpayer, because again, like before, when we don't properly communicate, it can be perceived as we don't have to worry about our special assessment, next year, or so on and so forth. So again, just throughout this process, we just really need to be crystal clear on what the intent is and what the process is going to be, so that our citizens know. But I'm for bringing it back, if we're taking a vote as far as bringing it back for an agenda item.
Okay.
Yeah, same. I'm all for bringing it back. I think
Right.
that, as was said, I think having this legal opinion helps us a lot, so let's go for it.
And Deputy Mayor Krause, you said also bring it
Yeah,
back
I'm for
on the
bringing it
agenda?
back. I wanted to bring up some points, but everybody kind of hit them already. But transparency is key, and community communication, so they understand what this is going to be and what the expectations of it. And I think with the ad hoc committee, they've put so much effort into it. I think we should kind of bring it back and let them have a part in it too.
So to put on the future agenda item, to decide whether or not to, A, bring back the original proposal prior to ad hoc, B, whether or not to go recreate the ad hoc or reconvene the ad hoc, and any other, I guess, alternatives for council to discuss. So is that enough direction, Mr. Rolla?
I want to make your first one. The second one was the possibility of bringing back the ad hoc. What was the first one? I just want to make sure. Just bringing back the topic for discussion.
The original proposal that was brought to council before the ad hoc was convened.
Okay, yeah, because the proposal from the ad hoc committee was different than
Right.
than a traffic-based fee. So you'd like to see
But even
that.
prior to
The one
the
that-
ad hoc convening, the original proposal that council voted on, the tiered,
The tiered approach, that was their recommendation. So you want us to bring that back?
well, there was the multi-tiered, like several tiers that council first considered. And then
Oh,
the ad
the
hoc
okay.
convened,
Yeah.
and they brought it down to two, an A or B,
Correct.
or an A and B. So that's
So
two-
bring both of those.
or to reconvene the ad hoc
Or-
to come up
okay.
with something else.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So
Yep.
So I think what we're saying, right, is we want the city to come back with us to give, especially the new council members, the information on the background, of how we got to this point, and then some proposal for engaging the ad hoc committee, as Deputy Mayor Krause had mentioned.
I think I have it now.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right.
Can I make sure that I have it?
Councilmember Peschel.
Thank you. So, what I think I just heard you say was that you want to suggest bringing back the original proposal that took place before we created the ad hoc,
Correct.
okay? Or recreate the ad hoc committee,
Reconvene.
reconvene the ad hoc committee. What about the option of just taking, are we not comfortable with the suggestion that the ad hoc committee gave us?
It was,
We're not,
I'll let city attorney speak to that.
The staff had made recommendations regarding the proposal from the ad hoc committee because on in a legal challenge, that would have been much more difficult to defend. So if you're going to review it again, I would suggest reviewing it along the lines suggested in that league opinion and that we had talked about previously of something based on trip generation.
okay.
So that's not an option to bring
So
back
that's-
what they recommended.
that is-
It could be an
that's
option
an
if it
option.
was amended.
Okay. I mean, my feeling is that if we reconvene the ad hoc committee, they've provided us something already. It doesn't make sense to reconvene them unless we expect them to come up with something different than the
Well,
last time.
yeah, we certainly can have that conversation when it comes up on the future agenda item.
And I would say, out of respect for that committee's work, because the committee disbanded, we went to council, and it was about a month later before we'd reported back on the legal aspects of it. Out of courtesy to that group, if the committee is reconvened, I would certainly talk to them so they understand it. And the timing was such that after that happened, some of the committee members called me, and then COVID hit, and we stopped talking to each
Right.
other. And so
Right.
there
And-
is some.
And as Councilmember Mugrow pointed out, there may be some, narrower scope to provide if that's what council decides, but we're getting really kind of deep into the meat of that, and it's not really appropriate for this meeting, so.
This helps us, though,
Yep.
so July 14th is our next meeting, and we'll bring this information back for council. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
So the next item, city manager, discussion of the 2020 special assessment hearings.
We have been putting this off because of the COVID emergency and, been discussing with staff. In recent years, Mr. Godey was very successful in holding pre-hearing meetings with the residents, actually, I believe right here in 404. And it helped get specific questions that the members of the public would have. And then by the time it got here, it was really more a fairness issue, things like that. There weren't, double checking the frontage of my house and things like that, which is not a council function. That's really staff's function. But certainly hearing from the public on the appropriateness of the special assessment and whatnot. What I thought is we don't know how many people will come, but obviously because of all the controversy with, the alternative special assessments, I'm thinking if we scheduled a hearing at a location that was larger, where we could have a pre-meeting like we have before, sort of a little open house where we can spread out Mr. Godey, Mr. Girock, Mr. Robbie, you have multiple people that could answer the technical questions, and then council could convene a hearing, say Senior Center North. It's not really being used much these days, and it's got a lot of space. So I'm wondering if that's something you would be willing to entertain. I don't think we would be able to do it live, but we would be able to tape it if you wanted it to be rebroadcast. So I'm trying to think of a place. We could also consider the convention center, but someplace big that gives you room to be able to hear everybody, and everybody has the ability, because, we can fit 9 people in here. One of those bigger rooms, you could fit a lot more and probably accommodate bigger crowds. I think some of the biggest crowds we've had on special assessments, maybe 30 people. It's not that unusual, but we've also had 2. I mean, it varies, but I'm curious if that would be okay to maybe schedule that specially just for that purpose, not just a hearing, that's the only item on the agenda, and then the council can act on it. But sitting on the special assessments forever is disingenuous, I think, to the public, and I'm trying to figure out a way to accommodate them and accommodate council and everything else. So I'm looking for feedback if that's something that maybe we should look at doing for scheduling purposes. I'm seeing a lot of.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd have to
Okay.
agree. I think the only thing would be, obviously, there's a lot of facilities we could choose from. It's middle of the summer. Let's just make sure we choose somewhere that has air conditioning for those that don't have the ability to hang out in a hot, stuffy room for too long. So there are some individuals, some of our, maybe are more susceptible to the heat that might appropriate an air-conditioned facility. But other than that, I think it's a great thing. That we've got to be flexible. We've got to get creative. It's just another way to try to accommodate the citizens in their need to make sure their hearings are held. So.
And the old adage, cooler heads prevail. I think there's probably some value to that. You like that, huh? It's like, okay. Okay. James just gave me the 4 that have been delayed so far: Snell Road and North Main Street and Storm Sewer, Oregon Street, 28th Avenue Utilities, that area. The miscellaneous utility improvements, the water main on Eagle Meadow and Washington, some of which you've already seen, and the storm sewer laterals. And then there's 2 others. There's another storm sewer lateral project we got to get scheduled for a public hearing, as well as asphalt overlay. With what I'm hearing, we'll try to fold all those in, maybe do something creative where we can schedule the time so that residents aren't bunching up on each other. We'll figure out some way to do that. Very good. Thank you, Council.
All right. So the next item for council discussion, direction of city manager, future agenda items, I placed on here to, I guess, poll the council on whether or not, A, you're familiar with the pledge from the Obama Foundation and the My Brother's Keeper Alliance, asking mayors and city councils to commit to 4 elements. I just was curious whether or not we would like to put this on a future agenda item if there's a majority of council that would like to entertain that topic.
Mayor, can you
Deputy
explain?
Mayor Krause.
Thank you. Can you explain it a little further? What the pledge entails?
So there's just a summary here that's in your packet, but I really had thought that we would be seeing the full report, although it may be somewhat lengthy, on the, I believe it's 2015 Task Force on 21st Century Policing that this came out of. And essentially the 4 elements are, some of these items Chief Smith is actually, and the police department are already working on, and that's the reviewing the policies and engaging citizens. And then the other aspects are reporting back to the community about that and potential reform and what that looks like. That's kind of open, but if you want to get into the detail of it, that report is a pretty sizable PDF, but very digestible, executive summary. Just would like to know if we have support for placing that on the agenda for further discussion at a future meeting. Councilmember Ford.
Yeah, given some thought to this, I think us joining the Government Alliance on Racial Equity, the creation of the DEI and some of the police chief's things he's already committed to, I think get at a lot of these concepts. And I'm probably hypersensitive to this, but the fact that this is coming from the Obama Foundation, it worries me that this would be perceived as some sort of partisan pledge, and if we turn police reform into a partisan issue, we're not going to be able to accomplish it, especially in a community as politically diverse as ours. So feel free to convince me otherwise, but that's
Sure,
my
sure.
initial concern.
And that's why I wanted, out of respect for council, you know, to ask what your thoughts are on whether or not you want to have that discussion. It's my understanding that, you know, there were many other institutions and nonpartisan, bipartisan support that came into the creation of this report that happened to be, you know, the Obama Foundation that put out this pledge to support these recommendations.
Oh,
But
yeah, and
I understand what you're
no
saying.
doubt, perception is
There-
reality,
It is about perception. Deputy Mayor Crossy.
Thank you, Mayor. If Chief Smith and some of the police force are already starting to institute some of this and working towards it, I mean, that's something that we as a council can support them, and wherever it came from, the Obama Foundation, wherever, it doesn't have to be viewed as a political issue, it's a people issue, and if we can make everybody make it a better place for everybody to live and drive that aspect of it, it really doesn't matter where it comes from originally, it's where it goes. So I'll support it.
Councilmember Allison Osby.
Thank you. My concern, I think it is in alignment with Mr. Ford. I do understand what Mr. Krause is saying. There is a people issue, but I think to say that we would support a pledge to review the force, that indicates that there's, to me, a problem to begin with. And I certainly haven't seen that from our past chief or our current chief. And I do believe that currently they are reviewing policies. They have been very transparent, and they've been also very engaging over the last few weeks, which is not unlike OPD. But as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I think at any point in time, we can ask to review policies. They are continually to engage, but when it comes to reform, I would not tell a doctor how to do an appendectomy, nor would I tell them how to do their job. So that's just my personal feeling.
And I guess I really appreciate, hearing what your guys' thoughts are. This really needs to be, at least from my perspective, viewed as a way in which we can support our police department right now, because they are doing these things. And the review is more about, the review engage report is more about us having our citizens know and understand what those policies are. And I do believe that efforts are being made in that regard, so that it's demystified, right? It's a little more clear and readily accessible for people to understand what those are. And I believe that, we have a police department that's very committed to making that happen. And it's just a matter of giving them an extra, I think, backing on that as well. Yes.
I guess my further comment would be is obviously we had a very good city council meeting a few weeks back in which we heard from the community. I very much got the impression that there is going to be opportunities in which the chief and other members of OPD can participate at a community level, and there certainly were folks there that encouraged that. And to be honest, I think those types of forums are going to be the best way to communicate. I mean, we could certainly do other things, but I think if staff is presented with those opportunities to engage directly through other mediums such as Pastor Butler and those types of things, I think we need to let those opportunities, I guess, happen organically.
So, Councilmember Peschel, I'm sorry, I didn't ask you if you had any comments about whether or not we want to place this on a future agenda item.
I had myself muted. I was talking, but couldn't hear me. So hold on. I want to bring it back up. So I feel that these 4 areas are good things for our community to talk about and to engage and to find out more about this stuff. So I kind of go both ways. In this thing, I don't necessarily know that putting this commitment on the council is the direction that we want to go, even though I support the steps and the direction that it's suggesting. So, and I think I'm actually leaning towards Ms. Allison Osby in regards to, giving our community the time to discuss and to work, and our police department to work within community groups revolving that conversation that we were talking about at our last meeting. So,
And I believe, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Councilmember Peschel, I believe also Chief of Police is going to talk about those continued conversations here shortly too, just as an FYI.
Sure. So I think we might get this out of being patient and having that broader conversation, other than us saying, let's do it, which we have every right to say, to do.
So just to be clear, this is about putting it on the future agenda.
Maybe you could let him finish his comment, because two people talking, it isn't going to work.
Thank you for your input, Councilmember Mugerauer. Would you like to add something, Councilmember Mugerauer?
When you're done speaking, I'd be happy to.
Go ahead.
No, I think, Bob, if you had anything else you wanted, we couldn't hear the last part, Bob, but if you wanted to restate it, have the floor and do so, otherwise I'll go.
Thank you for the clarification, but I'll be patient and wait for you guys.
Thank you, Bob. I happen to agree with Councilmember Peschel's line of thinking, which does follow Ms. Allison Osby's as well. I think patience in this community. I understand there are the needs of every community are different. We are not, LA. We are not New York. We are not Chicago. Thankfully, we are not anywhere close to those communities. But I think patience at the local level in Oshkosh is important. This is going to come out wrong, but I'm a bit concerned that it seems as though you're, Madam Mayor, that I think this is from your request, but
Yeah.
it seems as though the urgency from your side, or from your point of view, yet we're just seeing this. Councilmember Krause actually asked for a better explanation before, because we just saw this in our at our desk this evening for the first time. It wasn't included in the packet. It wasn't included in the download on Friday, so we didn't have a chance to read up and inform on it. While this is the executive summary, I haven't had a chance to see anything more than a double-sided piece of paper and expected to give guidance on it. I guess I'm a bit concerned that we got it and that we're expected to say, let's put it on the agenda for a vote at the next meeting. But I happen to agree with several of the comments made by Mr. Peschel, Mr. Ford, Ms. Allison Osby. These are things that our police department's already doing, and that's the part that's, it's not that it's frustrating, but that's the part that's intriguing to me, is that, and I don't even know if all the council members up here understand what our police department does, that no other police departments in the state of Wisconsin do, and very few in the nation do, in terms of accreditations, policies, procedures that they are required to follow. And so I think, I think it's important to one, get educated on what we're already doing before you make those types of decisions on inferring that some things aren't getting done. Because I think reading this infers that a few things aren't already being done, and in Oshkosh, they are.
So let's just back up here a little bit, if everybody wants to go on record on whether or not they want to have the discussion at a future meeting, because it seems like everybody wants to go ahead and have the discussion tonight. I am fairly certain that I saw all 7 council members copied on emails that came in requesting this. And so I took the initiative to understand what some of those requests were. And so if we don't have a majority support for having that discussion at a future council meeting, I'm okay with moving on from this. But I just want everybody to have the chance of going on record as to whether or not they would like to have that formal discussion. Or Deputy Mayor Krause.
I think discussion's always good. I mean, if it gives it a couple more weeks to think about it or get some more facts in front of us, I mean, no harm's ever come out of discussion. So that's my point of view. That's why I'll support bringing it forward.
Councilmember Erickson?
Thank you. I'm also supportive of at least having the discussion. I think, if the police department is already doing this work, it's helpful then for the public to be able to hear it and for us to be able to have that discussion, so.
Councilmember Ford, did you still feel like it was not necessary to be on the next agenda?
Yeah.
Or a future agenda?
I'd be in favor of waiting. I agree there's nothing wrong with having a discussion, but I think that the need for us to be able to signal to the community that we take these issues seriously and that we're taking action on these issues, I think we demonstrated that last, at our previous meeting. I think that was hugely important. I don't think that these issues that are in this promise are going to be things we're not discussing. They're going to come up. We're going to be hearing, like you said, from the police chief. I don't think we need to have a pledge on our next item or our next agenda, though specifically.
All right, well, I guess you have your answer. This does not go on a future agenda at this time. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your input and making that decision together. All right.
And Madam Mayor, thank you for putting it on the agenda.
Oh, absolutely. So our next item is report of council liaisons for boards and commissions. Let's see here. Council member Allison Asby, were any of your boards meeting? I don't.
No,
I should say.
I'm starting to
of those.
feel a little lonely. But no, I have nothing to report, Madam Mayor.
Traffic met, didn't they, Deputy Mayor Krause?
They met on the Tuesday of the last council meeting.
Oh, that's right, you already gave
We
that
discussed
report.
about the 9th Avenue project, that we couldn't come to consensus. So we'll have to decide that out of the 4 options in 2 weeks, or start at that.
Right. And Plan Commission.
Yeah, Plan Commission. Yeah, they met. You're welcome to come watch it anytime you want to, or see it online. The big issue was the training facility on Sawyer. And there was a discussion about kind of process and discussion about what issues are in the purview of the Plan Commission and what delve into policy and our city council issues. So I know that it was discussed afterwards that there'll be some follow-up from city attorney, I believe, about those issues.
And no long-range finance, right?
Nope.
Parks was canceled also. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Councilmember Erickson.
Thank you. I had a quick update. We had Transit Advisory Board last
Transit.
week.
Okay.
And so, big thing, we had a presentation from Holly Keenan with Make the Ride Happen and Winnebago Catch a Ride. So great overview of that program. And the big takeaway from that, they are in need of volunteer drivers. Many of their drivers were not able to continue volunteering during COVID, being more at risk. So they're looking for volunteers, and volunteers do get mileage reimbursed. So
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Let's see. Parks was canceled. Diversity, equity, and inclusion just now being created. So just to let you know, the expectation is that communication will go out to those newly appointed individuals and staff, getting some of those nuts and bolts, as well as getting that first meeting convened. So that's all I think we have then on that. City manager announcement and statements.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a moment. I have the outstanding issues in your agenda packet. Just a couple highlights. I'm going to mention the free student busing. I don't know if Councilmember Peschel has any update regarding the private fundraising and how that's going for the July 15th target date. Bob, you got anything?
There'll be no problem with the funding being over to the city in time for that. It's taken care of for the first year. And we've already got some for the second year already.
Okay. So that covers that one. The transitional housing, I did get a couple inquiries from some of the residents along in the Jefferson Avenue neighborhood. And so there was one person who was at the meeting who said, I'm the liaison person. So I reached out to her and just said, it was just a courtesy to say, I have nothing to report at this time. I think that's got to be a meeting that is face to face. We can't cut corners on that one. So that's the reason for the delay. We haven't reached out to the state since we met with them. We were ready to go. It just, everything happened. And that's going to need to be a workshop where I think the council said they would allow residents, representatives of some of the residents to speak. To make that happen, we need a collegial atmosphere, and it can't be cavernous. It's got to be, there's got to be a little coziness for us to have these discussions. So that's why we haven't proceeded. If there's any feeling that you need to have us pick up the pace, we can do that, but I don't even know if the state folks would come out right now. That's a prediction, not anything other than that. So keep that in thoughts as we go through the July 4th holiday. Sidewalk replacement program, I left this on just because we did talk to League Mutual. They recommend taking the 10-year schedule. Mr. Van Gompel and I have talked about, from a financing standpoint, that may be a challenge. So we're going to have that at least for discussion for council at the next meeting. Or at the, the budget workshop, which is going to be July 8th. City clerk and I have been discussing the absentee ballot thing. We're going to rely on WEC to fulfill their obligation for the November election. We're going to do August, they're going to do November, and we're just going to leave it at that. And then community conversations we're going to talk about next anyway, or after the COVID-19 update, so I'll save that. So those are the outstanding issues I have. COVID-19, I'm going to move the phones over and have Chief Stanley provide a brief update on some of the things that are going on. Chief?
Yeah, based on the technology limitations, I don't really have much earth-shattering to share, so I think we're best just to keep moving.
Okay, you want me to mention the CDC thing?
If you feel so led, go ahead.
Okay, the CDC has reached out to the Winnebago County Health Department because of the rise in the 20 to 29 age group. So they're coming to town and going to be shadowing our health folks and just see if there's anything they can gain from this, because that's a challenge that they know isn't going to necessarily be unique to this part of the country. You hear everything going on this week where all these football players are going back to school and they're coming up positive. I think the similarities are there, and they found out they happen in bars. Big surprise. So we're going to be looking to see what kind of input we get from the CDC as a result of that.
And I'm sorry, Councilmember McGraw wanted to speak to that.
If you don't mind.
Oh, yeah, please.
Okay. In regards to that, it's slightly interesting. Obviously, there's been national reports that you're referring to that were the Winnebago County is one of the largest hot spots for growth in the country, if not the top for a little bit there. Is that more of a educational tool for the CDC, or is that more of a correctional tool for the health department and or our citizens, or a little bit of both maybe? And I'm not asking you to put anybody under the bus, but I'm asking.
I think that's why the CDC's coming in. Is it more of an educational thing? I think there's clearly an educational thing that's there. I mean, I think the county has been pretty clear, the lack of social distancing at a lot of these places, and they've been able to track them to some bars. And without getting into a lot of detail, they've been able to do that. Is that everything? No, that's not everything, but that is certainly a function. And I think CDC is like, are there any other things we're going to learn? And I don't want to put Ms. Erickson on the spot, but you probably have some some discussions about that internally as well.
Yeah, I think the CDC coming in is to kind of dig in to see if there's other areas that are popping up to explain this age group. So we've been able to identify some things, but having that extra support come in from the CDC will be helpful.
Good. And then I have, with regard to COVID-19, we've had discussions in with staff regarding the reopening of City Hall, and it is my intent to reopen City Hall for public on Monday, July 13th. There's a reason we're not doing it on the 6th. We said originally we were closed through the July 4th holiday. For some practical reasons, it makes more sense for us to do it on the 13th. The reason I'm wearing my mask, even though I hate it, is because we did discuss various policies that we're going to enact. And one of the things we're going to have is while we're open, if you're in a public area, that's where we're going to require employees to wear masks. So I got to walk that walk. So I'm going to be wearing the mask at public meetings. And there's other things we're going to put into play. And I think we need a week or two to get that in, plus some of the practical things we're working on. So our goal is to be open on the 13th of July, and more information will roll out in the next couple of weeks. And with July 4th, starting it immediately after the holiday, it seems like it's convenient, but we want to make sure the information's out there so the public's aware of it. We're going to have a receptionist, greeter in the lobby. We're going to offer masks. We're not going to require the public to wear the masks, but if we're going to strongly suggest and recommend and offer them masks, we got to mask up ourselves if that's what we're doing. Private offices, that's another deal. We've been doing a lot of very good, effective social distancing with staff meetings, but once we bring in the public, I think we need to do what we can to demonstrate that we're interested in their health. I'm hoping people will continue to use all the online resources we have. We put a lot of time and money into that. If people can continue to do that, we want to send that message. But if they want to come in, we're going to be here to help them.
Would you just explain, city manager, because a number of people have emailed and called and asked, there's so much, I guess, competing information out in the community, in the county, in the state, in the country about mask wearing. Could you just maybe explain whether or not we have the ability to even require everyone who enters the city buildings to wear masks? Or maybe City Attorney Lawrenson would even want to weigh in on that. But and if we do have that ability, why we wouldn't?
The why we wouldn't is probably the question. We're one of only 4 states that don't have some mandatory requirements. I think as a result of the Supreme Court case, there's a lot of hesitancy to do that type of enforcement. I don't believe we have enough legal basis behind us that would withstand public opinion. So I'm trying not to make a legal case because we have a city attorney for that, and some of that's the county, but just from a practical standpoint, given everything that we've experienced here, I think it would be difficult. We will be training our employees to absolutely encourage people when they enter City Hall to wear a mask. To mandate it, I think we would create some conflict points that would probably not be in our best interest. We've had a couple people that don't like us being closed, and we made some accommodations for that, and sometimes you just make those accommodations. I think we can convey upon people by walking that walk. If we're wearing the masks out of courtesy and we're doing it to protect you, that's what everybody says at CDC. You're not doing it to protect yourself, you're doing it to protect everybody else. It's hard for me to ask people to put on a mask if I'm not willing to do it myself. And I think that's what we've discussed amongst our staff, and that's what we want to do because we know we got to walk that walk.
So then, if I understood that correctly, we could, but we won't.
Yeah, that's I guess another way, if you told me we 100% could do it, I'd still have some hesitancy to do it given everything that we've experienced. Maybe that's the best way for me to describe it. Then I don't get corrected on any legal thing from the city attorney.
All right, thank you for sharing that with the public.
Okay. The next one, community conversations on race and equity, and with that, I think I'll call up Chief Smith to kind of give a little update on some of the things we're doing. Both Chief Smith and I have been reaching out to some community members and really just trying to find, it's not just talking to one person, it's asking who else can we talk to. And this is relationship building. And I know the chief has done an outstanding job over the few years he's been here to develop relationships. And I think some of the issues that have faced our community, he's rose to that occasion. So the community conversations, I think, are very natural to him, but I'll let him talk about it a little bit.
Well, part of the concept of the community conversations, as we mentioned earlier, is that they should be community-led. It's my feeling that anything that any government body, whether it be the legislative body, the enforcement body, the legal side of it, we lead a conversation. It tends to have a level of it's the government talking to us, telling us what we should do. And having the community members driving the conversation and being available to answer substantive questions in a positive manner, I think we can always do that. It doesn't matter what the issue is, but if we can allow the community to lead those questions, that conversation, I think it serves all of us well. We have a model that I observed that occurred specifically in Appleton, and it was a partnership, as I again mentioned earlier, with several pastors in the Fox Valley area who led the conversation along with city leadership, to include the police chief and city leaders, and just to hear, similar to what we already did here at council meeting, to hear the views of others and to hear what their experiences are within the community. And the community conversations are not necessarily specific to only law enforcement, but to the community. What are you seeing here in the community that we can be better at as a community as a whole? Whether it be things that the government can do, whether there are things that our community business leaders can do, whether it could be the things that just our community members themselves can do. And then it allows us to develop action items later on down the road to hopefully address these issues. And with that, we've also additionally started some internal conversations with members of the community, specifically Pastor Butler as well as Rodney Frazier have come in and started working with my officers, and they're doing one-on-one conversation internally so that we have the opportunity to hear community members for each individual member of the police department and for them to get their experiences. And there's been I attended the first session, and there was a spirited conversation on who we are, who our community members are, and experiences that they have. And I think having it led by those who have been successful, I think will be successful for us as well.
And Chief Smith has invited me to attend one of those sessions, and it's I'm really looking forward to it. Had a great conversation with Pastor Butler today, and one of my outreach, he's going to do some connecting for me as well. It's probably a little overdue, and I certainly happy to admit that, and one of the steps in the process of engaging another segment of our community that's been overlooked. And we'll be doing that, and we're going to continue now. Keep this on, and we'll continue to talk about it at subsequent meetings. I'm not going to let this rest, and I know the council doesn't want me to let it rest.
So do you anticipate at some point putting out some kind of report that summarizes those community conversations, or sharing that on the website, or what are your thoughts with that?
I think certainly that's something we should do, and really talking about what we're hearing from our community. But I don't know if it's my website that it should go on. I think it should actually go on the city website. Because again, this is a community conversation, not necessarily a police conversation. Mm-hmm. We certainly have our role in this as a member of the Oshkosh government, but this is a community conversation about racism within the community, not about racism with the police department.
I like that idea, and I think that's a stepping stone to having conversation. Part of the conversations is we need to do a little more listening than telling. I got all sorts of stuff I can talk about, but there's a lot of stuff I need to listen to, and and see what they have to say, and what more can we do? What can we do? And I think I'll take that advice and keep it, and we'll keep talking about it, because I think Chief's right. This isn't just a police department issue. This is a society issue, and we have to address it in that manner.
And I believe, Chief, earlier this week you were mentioning that there is now a specific link, though, on the OPD page for some of the more direct contact in terms of concerns that citizens
Absolutely.
have.
Yep. Yep.
That's recent
And that's
addition.
part of what we're already doing things right now. We're already moving forward on things we're listening. We're listening to what we've already heard. Some of those conversations were hard, you were there.
Yep.
But we're still listening and taking what we hear and what are actionable and working on them.
And I appreciate, everyone being willing to have these tough conversations, because they are uncomfortable, right? And in different forums for different community members, may be more comfortable than others. And certainly, all of us as council reps have had some of those uncomfortable conversations and email exchanges, and we're going to continue to do so. The police department's going to continue to do so. This is not just a one and done. It continues. Thank you. Councilmember Mugrauer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, appreciate that. And actually, I just wanted to kind of follow up on something City Manager Roloff said, as well as Chief Smith. At least on my little over 2 years on council, we've talked at numerous different times about how we need to improve upon telling our story, or how we need to make sure we're always telling our story, tell it better. And we've talked about it in multiple different settings for different reasons. But I think you both just hit on it, and City Manager Roloff, I think, really did that. This is the time to now listen, instead of telling our story, that we need to listen to those other stories, that instead of just telling what we're always doing. And we had it wasn't spirited discussion just a little bit ago regarding the pledge, but just that we need to be willing to have those conversations, but also just more listening skills than telling skills at the moment. And I appreciate you guys recognizing that and your sincerity in moving that conversation forward. So I like hearing that.
So we'll keep updating council, and please give us feedback. It's important. Couple more mundane things, a couple of memos in your packet. One regarding the repair of leaking water main river crossing. That's not something you can avoid. So we did have one leak, and we needed to do an amendment to it because there was need a little more work, and it took it over 25, which triggers my notice to council. And then the last one is the cooperative purchase of the emergency generator for the convention center. That was a budgeted item. We were able to find it very competitively through the cooperative purchasing program. So we got it half of what we thought we were going to have to pay for it. So we're very excited about that. And that's all I have for this evening.
All right, thank you very much. And Deputy Mayor Krause has a motion for us.
I move that the Common Council convene into closed session to discuss the mid-year review of the city manager and employee over which the Common Council has jurisdiction and exercises responsibility pursuant to Section 19.851C of the Wisconsin State Statutes.
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? All right. All in favor?
No.
Roll.
Voice call on this item.
Allison Osby,
Aye.
Krause,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Heschel,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
And I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Like a minute, Bob.